I now call this regular meeting of Davenport Community School Board of Directors to order. Director Beck, could you please read the board priorities?
Yes. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students, provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff, direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Director Poshen, would you please read the mission and vision statements?
Mission statement: enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Vision statement: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. We'll now move on to presentations. We have a presentation for the Lincoln Center. Step on up to the podium.
Good evening.
Push the button.
Good evening. My name is Rogers Kirk. I'm President and CEO of TMBC Lincoln Resource Center. Just a short while back, this board took a chance on us as we purchased the building in the midst of all of the controversy.
Hold the mic closer.
I wanted to come and just tell this board, thank you for taking that chance on us and to provide you with an update of what we have been doing at the Lincoln Resource Center. I've often been told that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so I would like to show you some of the things that we've been doing at the Lincoln Center. Hello. Let me thank you so very much for being a part of the Lincoln Center opening. My name is Rogers Kirk. I'm President and Chief Executive Officer of Together Making a Better Community Lincoln Resource Center. This resource center has been a vision of ours for many years. And now we are seeing the fruition of that vision. And I'm so happy to have you to come and be a part of this as we show you what happens when a vision comes into fruition. So thank you so very much for coming and being a part of this. And we look forward to our having partnership with each other as we move forward in the TMBC Lincoln Resource Center. Thank you.
Welcome. I'm Tracy Singleton, Executive Director of TMBC, Together Making a Better Community at the Lincoln Resource Center in Davenport, Iowa. I'm honored to be part of an organization that is committed to change here in the Quad Cities. TMBC was a vision of members of Third Missionary Baptist Church. Over the years, their vision kept growing. They knew they needed a space that was larger than what they could provide. And that is how TMBC got started. I'm honored to be here daily, working for change and being part of the vision and mission of Third Missionary Baptist Church and what they hope to achieve here in the community. So We hope you enjoy this presentation today, learn more about what is going on with TMBC, and encourage you to be part of the change that is going to happen here in the Quad Cities.
TMBC is a 501c3 nonprofit organization structured with the needs of our community at the core. It is our mission to provide a facility that offers centralized services and programs that may not be readily accessible to the underserved populations in the Quad Cities. We strive to be flexible enough to change when the community needs change, and to have the vision to foresee potential needs for the future. We are a community-based, friendly organization for all. Hello, my name is Gay Shannon Burnett, and I'm the co-founder of Azumbuike African American Council for the Arts. Azumbuike is a 501c3 nonprofit organization with the mission of reconciling racial divides that exist in our community and sparking a much larger conversation about race relations through the arts. When translated, Azumbuike means the past is our strength. In 2014, we were incorporated and spent the last 6 years at Bucktown Center for the Arts. When Bucktown shut down, we were left with the dilemma of trying to find a new space during the pandemic. When looking for new space, we didn't want just some place to rent. We wanted some place that our organization could call home. The Lincoln Community Center has provided us with the much needed room to grow and expand our capacity and our service to the community. Azumbuike has an art gallery that offers exhibit opportunities to emerging artists. We also have a kids art program. We have a summer film program and much, much more. We're home to Wrapping Ourselves in God's Love African American Breast Cancer Support Group. Azumbuike would like to take this time to thank everyone that has made it possible for TMBC to have this wonderful space and giving us the opportunity to expand all of our programming and really reach more young people in our community. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
So Urban Exposure Independent Film Project is a 10-week program where we teach directing, screenwriting, cinematography, and editing. And each student leaves the program with their own short film. So how it came about was I came home to Rock Island from Algiers, Algeria. I was working on a film with my father, who's also a filmmaker. And I took up a job, one of many actually, as a substitute teacher. I was substituting at my alma mater, Rock Island High School, and I was talking to a lot of the students there, mainly Black and brown students, about where they see themselves after high school. And some of the conversations were a bit disheartening. A lot of the students that I talked to, or a number of them, they didn't see themselves even graduating from Rocky, which was sad because, you know, after graduation, you're supposed to go to college and or maybe find a good job or or, just start your life, but they didn't really see anything past high school. So I made the suggestion of film school. I wasn't the best student, I was quite average, but I knew I was very creative. So film school worked for me, and I thought it could work for them. They hadn't even thought about film school. They probably didn't even know what film school actually was. So I decided to bring it to the Quad Cities through urban exposure. And I would say that in the past 6 years, we have seen success. We have a number of students that are going to film schools at the University of Iowa, Columbia, Chicago, DePaul, Boston University. We have students that have worked on independent feature films and semi-pro and professional feature films. And we also had students that have entered their short films into festivals here in the United States and in Canada and have won. So but I think the most successful thing is that it gives them a voice that they can use. In this time, leaving 2020 into 2021, the landscape has changed dramatically. And those are stories that need to be told. And I think the young people are the best people to tell these stories. So that's why I think Azubuike and urban exposure has been very successful in the past 6 years.
Hi, my name is Teresa Moore, and I am President and CEO of I Am Productions. I Am Productions is an entertainment company that was started in 2003 by myself and my husband, Randy. We wanted to create a platform for people like me who didn't always get cast in parts in their local theater. We wanted to create a platform so people could express their talents, be it acting or singing or playing an instrument. We wanted to create that platform for people. We want to provide quality entertainment for our community. We have had the opportunity to perform in Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and here in Iowa. We do original plays. My husband is a songwriter, so a lot of the music that we use is original music. We love what we do. We're expecting things to grow even more so with us in the very near future. And we hope that you will keep an eye out for us. Once again, I'm Teresa Moore.
Watching Quad Cities Live.
Here's more work by our featured artist, LaToya D. Lewis. She's an art teacher at Mid-City High in Davenport. We asked her to create our logo to honor Black History Month. This is what she came up with. LaToya says, when designing my logo for Black History Month, I focused on the spiritual aspect of Black Lives Matter. I see it as an expressive, nonverbal beckoning statement for justice in the Black community, young and old, something that I'm deeply passionate about. The purpose of my logo is to hopefully bring awareness to the Quad Cities that God sees all lives as being important. Therefore, the exclusion and disregard of any race is unfair, unjust, and certainly not pleasing for Him to look upon. My design represents the pride, beauty, and nurturing ancestral strength of Black women and men who gave birth to the African American community. The head wrap, dressing on the letter Q with a kente cloth knot, represents the Black women that ties the Black community in a bond of unity and unconditional love, a bond which overflows into individual lives, influencing who we are today as a race. The open letter C represents the strong arms of black men reaching for a rightful celebration of equality for their children's present and future dreams, hopes, and possibilities. Finally, the Kenti fabric embedded into the word live is a bold effort to be recognized as a people and acknowledgement as being alive. So there you have it, folks. You can visit LaToya's gallery named Art for the Spirit, Tea Room and Studio. It's inside the new Lincoln Center we told you about earlier on 7th Street in Davenport. LaToya will be holding art classes in her space there soon. Keep an eye on the Lincoln Center's Facebook page for more details.
Hi, it's Tracy Singleton again, and I am excited to talk about our remote learning project, TMBC Connects. We discovered at the beginning of the school year that there were families that were right here in our area of the Lincoln Center who were having problems accessing Wi-Fi hotspots, did not have internet service, and their children were falling behind, trying to just maintain their learning. So we were able to apply for a grant through the COVID-19 relief funds and the Community Foundation. And we were able to start a remote learning project here at the Lincoln Resource Center. So what we are able to do is help 3 families, 10 kids, who just needed support systems. And we were able to provide that. The kids are here daily from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They have access to online tutors through Augustana College. And there is a retired Davenport school teacher that is on site with them to help them navigate through these challenging times of remote learning. We are also able to connect them to the other resources that are here in the building. So they're not only getting what they need as far as remote learning goes, but they're also receiving service and access to resources that are helping them succeed in life. We do know that school has gone back, but we do have students that are 100% remote learning. So we still have them here. We're still figuring out a way not to just help them in school, but to help their families and help them in life. It's Tracy Singleton again. As executive director, I have a huge part in helping to work on next steps and being able to execute the mission and vision of the board and make sure that we are providing for all the needs in the community. We do see the Lincoln Resource Center serving a dual purpose. Of course, there will be intentional audiences in here through programming and through events and through our organizations and nonprofits that will be in the building. But we also need to serve the people that live right here in the neighborhood. If you go, a few blocks up, a few blocks across and back down, there is nothing here in this immediate neighborhood. No grocery stores, no convenience stores, no gas stations, no retail, no ATM machines, no type of medical facility. So we have to be a resource. I think it's our responsibility as a resource center to serve the immediate neighborhood where we reside. So some of our next steps include addressing food insecurities by providing a food pantry here within the building, and also having a walk-in clinic where not only are we able to provide services to the people that are in the neighborhood, but hopefully what we can start to do is bridge that gap between the African-American community and our healthcare systems by being able to have them sit with someone that looks like them, who they can build this trust with, who they can then trust when this person says, you need to take this next step. We also are very big on supporting Black-owned businesses and providing low-cost space and providing a storefront for them as well, a brick and mortar for them to be able to scale up and grow their business to that next level. So we have 35 rooms. As you see, we have 10 tenants so far. So we have plenty of room to help people dream and accomplish their goals. And last but not least, as far as short-term goals go, we want to be able to have programs that are going to empower the African-American community. I often get asked lots of times, well, why is this just for Black boys, or why is this just for Black businesses? At the end of the day, we have to empower us. And when we do that, when the focus can be on making us as great as we can be, then that only makes for a greater Quad Cities. So when I say we're a resource center for the African-American community, but we understand at the end of the day, it takes all of us. It takes all of us to invest. It takes all of us to engage. It takes all of us to empower. So we welcome anyone to come through these doors. Just know what the focus is when you come in, but also understand that we all have a hand in making a better community.
Again, I want to say thanks to all of you for, as you see, that we're well on our way. And it's all about how can now we partner with the school, Davenport School Board system. Because as you see what we're doing, it's all about education. It's all about providing something new into our community. If you were to watch the entire film, you'll find out that there are many other things that we are doing that you can partner along with us. And so I want to just come and share some of those things that we are doing. And so at this time, I can go on and on about it, but I'd like to entertain any questions that anyone may have. But I want to encourage you as they download this to be able to watch all the things that we are doing and our future that will be is outlined things that will happen at the TMBC Lincoln Resource Center. So please do that. Any questions?
Director Klein Jerome.
How do students know what's all available to them there? Do you go into schools and share it, or like how would they know all these great things are happening?
Well, no, we have not done that. All of this has been done by word of mouth. We're hoping that this presentation will open the eyes of the Davenport school system, what we are doing, and let us partner, let's come together and look at ways we can now reach into the schools to make more students available what we have to offer.
Thank you.
Director Beck.
Thank you for sharing that presentation with us. It's really nice to know what's going on. Do you have, I saw the list, are some of these programs academic programs like after-school tutoring or anything like that yet? Or is that something that you've thought about doing in the future?
Well, we have some, I have our executive director here. I'd like to, maybe she can address that piece.
We do have a remote learning program. We started in December, right before Christmas break. We had 10 kids. We received funding through the Community Foundation's COVID-19 Relief Fund. And so out of the 10 kids, they were from 3 families. We had groups of siblings. And so we were working with them every day. We do work with them every day from 10 to 2. They come in the morning. We had tutors from Augustana College online, and then we had one Davenport Community School District retired teacher who had just retired, so she was very familiar with Edgenuity and with classroom Google Meets. And so we saw significant improvement, not only in their grades, but then services that they were having because they were on an IEP or, so their probes and speech therapy and stuff, they were not being able to accomplish those because the parents had to work. So they weren't able to go to these meetings. So we were able to bridge that gap and get those services started back up. So when Davenport went back to full with the option of 100% in school, we have one family, 2 have asthma very bad, so they are still remaining remote learners, and so we still have them at our school. Our funding, what we had for funding ended last week, but we're figuring out a way to keep them going and keep them there. They're flourishing. They're able to get back, into those other things that help them with their work. So we have that, and we do have an after-school program in there. Jeremy Tapman, who owns Chick-fil-A on 53rd, has his Living Legacy program in there. And so approximately 10 kids are in there every day after school from 3:30 to 5:30 with them as well.
Thank you.
And our goal is that to have a summer program that would embody more kids to that particular program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and I think you guys are doing great things there, so we greatly appreciate you coming and presenting that. I know I toured it with Vice President Hayes, and we checked out the art gallery, and there's a lot of cool things in there. So thank you for everything you're doing for the community. We greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. And again, as I said earlier, that I look forward to partnering with the district and doing bigger, greater things. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presentation is on the CTE program, the face shields production.
So this is something that has kind of been on my heart since we went entered into this pandemic. We have wonderful programs in the district. We have wonderful instructors. So today I've asked 2 of them to come and just kind of talk about their role that they played in helping prepare Davenport Community School District for the pandemic. And I'll tell you, you're going to be impressed. So with us today, we have Matt Hassick. He's our administrator at Davenport West High School. We have Greg Smith and Jason Franzenberg. Did I get it right?
Yep.
So worried I was going to murder that one, Jason. But anyway. So I would like them to briefly talk about their role. The product that you see in front of us has been distributed to every one of our schools in the district where necessary to provide that PPE for people. So go ahead, Greg.
So my name is Greg Smith. I teach at West High School. And so Mr. Schneckloff approached us in mid-June to start producing face shields. I think the original order was for 100. That soon grew to 200, and then after the governor changed to in-person school, that ballooned to 2,000. So we worked in the months of July and August to produce approximately 2,000 face shields for the needs of our district. We use a combination of 3D printing and laser cutting balsa wood plywood. We purchased some because we were working with so Mr. Franzenberg and I were working with a teacher that had already been producing these, and so that's where the final idea came from. And so we purchased some from him, and then we produced 200 3D printed ones in-house, and then we made approximately 1,700 of the the laser cut face shields. Now, you might be asking yourself, why did we produce them two different ways? Well, one was cost and the other was time. So to produce the 3D printed ones were about $7 a piece and took approximately 4 hours to print 3, so just over an hour and a half to print each one. We cut that time down to about 3.5 minutes per on the laser cut ones and reduced the cost to $2 a piece. And so I spent a majority of my summer at school producing face shields. Mr. Franzenberg helped out, and then also Alicia Massey and David Robinson are paras at West High School. They helped assemble. And then Dan and Kathy Grinstead were volunteers in the community that also helped assemble. So we estimate that we saved the district anywhere from $12,000 to $17,000 based on the purchase price of an $11 face shield that sat right on your face. These face shields allowed the face shield to come out so the protective cover is not on your nose and on your face. So do you have any questions?
I just want to thank you guys so much for the effort that you put into this. I think it's a great display of the excellence that happens in our district all the time. It's been heavy on my heart to get you guys here to show a little bit of that off. And so I just can't tell you how much I appreciated it, the collaboration, the willingness to move forward and help our district out. It was just outstanding. And that's why I wanted you guys to come here just to thank you so much for putting that together. These have been very helpful, and we'll have them for a long time. And now we have the playbook to do it in case we ever need it. The uses of these inside of our district do not stop during a pandemic. We've learned a lot about how to keep ourselves safe. So, in our nurses, our custodians will be utilizing our nurses. Anybody that needs to interact in a close format that way, but still needs to be able to see. We utilize them in our early childhood classrooms where the idea that you need to see my mouth and when we're producing sounds is very important in some of our special education classrooms as well. So just can't thank you guys enough for your hard work and dedication to this project. So.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you guys and your whole team for everything. Mr. Franzenberg, I didn't recognize you without a ball cap on, so.
We've coached Little League together for many years.
You're coming back this year?
We'll see.
I got him on record. Director Snyder.
Who came up with the design on those? That is unlike anything I've seen on others out in the market.
So the design, so I was taking a class with Mr. Franzenberg, and one of the students in the class had already been producing probably since March or April on his 3D printer at school. It was called the Budman design. And so I talked to him a little bit more in depth. And with that, I reached out to the Budman Corporation and got their plans to laser cut, because they also have plans to do that as well. And so that's kind of where we came up with it. And so it's not original to us. We just kind of modified it to meet our needs.
When you hold those, the quality of that is remarkable for something that's 3D printed or cut in a school building. It's outstanding.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys again. That awesome work. I'm surprised you didn't find a way to fit a Falcon on there or something, or at least put West, so everyone know where they came from.
It's actually in the
design. Time was key.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Student board reports.
I actually had a few questions about going back and stuff. So I was wondering about Mid-City next year. is that going to be open to sophomores next year, or is it just going to be a junior senior thing? Because I've heard different mentions of things floating around like last year, but I never really knew what was going on, so I thought I'd ask.
Those aren't in the talks right now, so more information to come about
Okay,
them.
thanks.
Did you have anything to report on anything happening at your school or anything? Or?
I'm all online, so I don't really know what's going on in my school.
Okay.
Anything could be happening. I have no idea. It would have been nice if other people were here to be able to report on what's happening in their schools, but I don't know what's going on in mine.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you though for being here.
Yeah, of course.
The most honest report we probably ever had.
Probably.
All right. Moving on to board reports. Are there any board reports? Director Snyder.
On behalf of the board, I wanted to express our condolences to the Defoe family. Longtime board member Nikki Defoe lost her husband to a 5-year battle with thymic cancer. So our condolences out to Nikki and their 4 kids, Mitchell, Kyle, Jared, and Hannah, and brand new grandbaby Noel. He fought hard for 5 years. It's a very rare, unforgiving cancer, and our hearts go out to the family.
Director Klein Jerome.
I would just like to say from the board, congratulations to Mary, who this is her last board meeting. She is retiring. She has been great help coming on new to the board a year ago, and we will miss you, but enjoy your retirement.
Director Poston.
Since our last regular board meeting, I was able to make a few more school visits. I want to thank Principal Schultz at Wood Intermediate for spending some time with me and touring the building. Also, Principal Wilkins at Sudlow Intermediate, I'd like to thank her. And then at Madison Elementary, Principal Mielenhausen, appreciate all 3 of them spending the time with me. Just a couple things I'd like to point out. When I was at Madison, this was before we were back 100% in the classroom. I think their biggest concern was once everyone's back and 6th graders in the elementary, just how that was going to go as far as available space in the building. Over at Sudlow Intermediate, as most of you know, the Career Arts Academy was moved to Sudlow. I would like to report that there's still some work that needs to be done, and I'm not sure where that is on a timeline, but I know there's, like, the dance floor hasn't been installed and a couple other things. And then another thing, sometime I would like to have Nick Newman, who's the AVID elective teacher and coordinator for the AVID program at Sudlow. And I would, at some point, I'll make a board request for Nick to come and make a presentation.
Are there any other board reports? Seeing none, I will move on to communications. Open forum. The open forum request form is now available online for those who want to participate in open forum virtually. The link is located on the front page of the district website, right-hand side. And for those who want to participate virtually in open forum, the request must be emailed to Brenda T. And her email is on the website by 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it is not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. With that, I have 3 in-person open forum requests and 1 virtual open forum request. So we will do them in this order. Ralph Johansson, Ken Crumwitty, Jennifer Elliott, and then the virtual one is Amanda Burke. I believe I said that right. So, Mr. Johansson, if you would like to step up to the podium.
Thank you. Do you have to wear the mask when you're talking?
No.
No.
Great, thank you. I figure I'm at least 6 feet away from you guys, so. I wanted to say a few things.
Hold on. Make sure you state your name and address.
My name. Thank you for that admonition. I appreciate that. My name is Ralph Johansson. My address is 13120 100th Avenue, Davenport, Iowa, 52804.
You may proceed, sir.
Thank you. First off, I want to say, wow, what a great opportunity this is to speak to our community and especially to all of you. I really appreciated that presentation earlier from TMBC. I think that was really heartwarming and it helps all of us, I think, understand some of the great things that we can do in our community with the resources that we have. Second, I wanted to say I have the highest regard for every one of you up here. And I appreciate all of the work that you do. It's hard work and it's really important. And I think the past year has probably been really challenging for all of you. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing individually and collectively. And as I thought about that, I thought about how difficult it would be to do your work without a fantastic board secretary. And I thought if this board was going to try to get along without a board secretary doing the work that the board secretaries do, keeping you guys in line, helping you understand schedules, preparing so much and working with you on preparing the agendas, getting all the information out to our community, helping all of us understand and keep up to date on what's going on in the district. And I think that Mary, as I had an opportunity to work so closely with her over a few years, she was so good. And I used to think of her kind of like radar on MASH. And she would usually know more what I was thinking than I knew what I was thinking myself. And sometimes we'd have a lot of fun because she could be very forceful in the way that she would present things to me. But I really appreciated her, and Mary, I really do. I love you, Mary. I think you're just absolutely wonderful, and thank you very much for all the years you put into the district and for all the work that you did for all of us in the community and for me individually. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ralph. She said it did get a little bit easier since you've been gone.
I'm sure.
Ken Crumwitty, you're up.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate what Ralph said. Let me first start out by saying I'm Ken Crumweedy, 33 Madison Circle, Davenport, Iowa. And I'm here, first of all, to thank every one of you that serve on this board and our new superintendent. You know, I read about you all the time in the news, but this is the first time I've been to a board meeting in person for a long time. In fact, the last time I came to pay tribute to the gentleman that just spoke a few minutes ago. I was vice president of this board, as some of you know, for 5 years. I served on this board for 9 years. And every year was challenging, but I can't even imagine what challenges you face now with everything that's going on this last year. And so people really don't realize what board members go through unless they're actually on the board, and to see what you're doing and what the district is doing, what our AEA is doing. And I'm going to plug our AEA because I'm on the AEA board representing Davenport. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing and your work with the State Department and so forth. So thank you, thank you, thank you. But the main reason I'm here is for Mary Carruthers. 10 years ago, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I, as vice president, chaired the committee to interview board secretaries. And, you know, as the board members know, there's only 2 positions in this district that boards hire, and one's the superintendent and one's the board secretary. And so it's a pretty big responsibility. And there were 3 of us that served on that committee. And we had some great candidates, let me tell you. But Mary was hands down. We knew she was a great fit for our board at that time and a great fit for our district. And so, like Ralph said, she was so easy to work with and was so very helpful in getting the information that we needed. Plus, I don't know about nowadays, but she really fed us well. And anyway, thank you, Mary, for everything that you've done. And also, I worked with your replacement, Brenda, for a number of years, and I know you're in good hands. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ken. Next up, we have Jennifer Elliott. And if you could state your name and address for the record, don't do like the other 2. Thank you.
My name is Jenny Elliott. My address is 2124 Meadowbrook Road, Davenport 52807. And Mary, I don't know you, but happy retirement. I feel like I should say something nice. I'm here to speak on the MOU regarding the school resource officers that was commented on prior to this meeting. I am representing students and parents through the Quad City Interfaith Organization. We have been working as a community members doing some organizing around school resource officers since this summer, kind of when the task force got started. And we've had some concerns about the task force and school resource officers from the beginning. One of the main things that started as a concern and is still a concern after hearing the comments is the lack of representation in the task force. Hearing that there was no student input into that MOU, and then also that there was no parent input is very concerning to us. From the beginning, we had asked the mayor to diversify that task force, and he chose not to. I think, you know, listening to the national climate and then also some data that I'll share here briefly too, students of color are disproportionately disciplined and arrested in the Davenport school district. So to not address that and to not have student input into how an SRO serves in their school is very concerning. I have a couple of handouts that I would like to leave you with that have our concerns specifically listed out about some of the things that are in that MOU. I ask that you look at those and take those back to the task force, as we haven't had a voice as a community and the students that are in the school system to give our input to that MOU. I went to a school, I grew up outside of Minneapolis. I went to a school that had multiple SROs. I had a great relationship with them. They coached our sports teams. A month ago or a year ago, I would have totally agreed with, the avenue of mentorship and what a resource those officers are. After the murder of George Floyd, I reconnected and had some really deep conversations with my peers and my friends of color that went to my same high school, and they did not have the same experience with me as me. And they were very harmed and uneasy having police officers in our school district. And I feel like that is kind of being ignored with this MOU by not having student voices represented. But I am happy to hear that there is a focus on data collection. That has been another thing that we have asked of the task force, both the city council and some of you on the school board that we've talked with. I did, however, make a request to the Davenport Police Department through the Freedom of Information Act, and did receive some data on arrests that have been made by SROs between 2015 and essentially 2019. There wasn't any data available for the 2020-2021 school year. In total, 171 arrests were made. Of those, 116 or 68% were Black students. If you compare that to the demographics of the Davenport school system, only 20.3% of the students are Black. So from a surface level, and I know I don't have a complete view, but it seemed like this data didn't exist, and the police department has it right here, and it's very concerning. The most common arrest charges were assaults, in which 80% of those students arrested were Black. The second most common was disorderly conduct, in which 91% of the students arrested were Black. And I think the argument for SROs is obviously safety. And I think with the climate of our culture that usually comes around weapons and guns and safety in school, in the time period of data that I got information provided, there were only 2 arrests made on weapons, and those were by white students. Everything else was more around, disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and this data did not include anything around truancy, which also I think is concerning that data is not available. So I'm happy that this dialogue is happening. I think there are some very good things that are in that MOU, but I just ask for you to look over our data and really consider if we are doing enough. I think if you compare to the national climate and some of the dialogue that's going down there, I would challenge that this MOU and the changes that we're making for the student resource officers is not enough at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. And if you want to pass that stuff around, thank you very much. Next up, virtually, we have Amanda Burke. Are you on the line?
I am.
All right. Start out by stating your name and address, and feel free to go
My
ahead.
name is Amanda. Okay. My name is Amanda Burke, 2819 Telegraph Road. I guess my concern here today would be about the bullying going on in the schools, and kind of what we can do to address it. It's not only happening by students, but also staff. And as a parent, I have went the routes that I knew best. I have been to HR and spoke with them about my concerns, and it falls on deaf ears. So I guess I'm hearing a plea. Somebody's got to do something about the bullying that goes on in these schools. And I mean, coming from students and staff, and a blind eye either gets turned or it falls on deaf ears. and it negatively affects children's mental health, which I have personal experience with my own child who's in a school here. I know the teachers have been put in a really hard position with COVID, and the students have as well. And I think it's hard on everybody. And I just really feel that there should be more done. I guess like the lady mentioned before, as far as resource officers and whatnot being in the school. And when situations are brought to attention of the staff and it's ignored, you know, as a parent, I feel frustrated. And I just think that it should be addressed a little better, or I don't know, but it's an issue in the schools. I don't know if you guys have any recommendations as far as, you know, what to do, but I think it's a situation that definitely needs to be looked into further.
Thank you, Amanda. As I read in, we can't speak on any of this because it wasn't published in the agenda, but I'm sure one of our board members will make a board request to get some information on this. But thank you for participating in open forum.
Is there a way for me to like find out, or as far as when it comes on the agenda to speak, or because I've got a couple other parents too that are willing to speak?
At any of our regular meetings, which happen on the second and the fourth meeting, I'm probably not even supposed to be answering you right now, but on our regular
Sorry.
board meetings, we allow for open forum, and that's the time to come. Or you can certainly email. I mean, all of our emails are on our website. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
I got no other open forum requests. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes,
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Snyder. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Snyder?
I move that the board accept the administration's recommendation and adopt the bills from the bill listing period of 1/21/21 to 2/17/21, whereas resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods 1/21/21 to 2/17/21 with the following voided checks. Check number 372118 payable to Tim Seward, wrong account, and check number 372125 payable to Unity Point at Home, again wrong account.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Moving on to the superintendent report.
Thank you. Tonight we're going to be talking about a reorganization. Davenport was directed by the State Board and the Department of Education to address corrective actions related to both finances and educational programming. Bill, I'd ask that you come up and be available for comments as well. Several deficiencies were identified in the site visit. A different organizational structure has been required to successfully address these critical areas of need. We're going to be reviewing that today. The Department of Education has required and has been involved in designing a structure that ensures Davenport is on a sustainable path of improvement in finances and educational programming. Overall, the objectives are operational efficiencies resulting in a redesign and an administrative structure, consistent and alignment expectations across the district, or improved student outcomes. One of the overall themes that you will see in this presentation is the alignment of resources at central office moving out to buildings. So in the first thing that you see here, you will see that we have regional. Okay, hold on.
There you go.
Okay, so on the screen you will see we have instructional leadership directors that oversee regions, the West, Central, and North, based off of our high school feeder systems. We have the Director of Learning and Learning and Results, which is a combination of our Technology Department, Curriculum Department, our Director of Equity and Learning Support, which is a combination of our Special Education Department and Learning Supports. And off to the right, you have the Director of Operations, Human Resources, and the Director of Finances. Those positions were recently hired, so those positions will stay the same. The three on the left, if you will scroll up, please. The three on the left comprise the instructional cabinet. 5 on the left, thank you. Will you scroll up, please? So the Director of Learning Results and the 3 instructional leadership directors and the Director of Equity and Learning comprise the instructional cabinet of the superintendent. Mr. Decker, after those first 2 slides, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Sure. One of the very intentional parts of this structure is, if you thought about that first slide, there are 8 positions that were all horizontally the same. There wasn't any up and down. Those are all folks that are expected to collaborate together. Nobody's anybody's boss. They are a team that directs the work of the district. And then these 5 folks that were on the left of the first screen are expected to work together to make instructional decisions, again, together in a way that is very collaborative.
Thank you. Mary, will you scroll up, please, to the next? To give you a better visual of what that looks like, there's regional teams, and the arrows are critical. There's both collaboration side to side, as that will be critical, and there's both vertical and horizontal collaboration. At each level, that will be critical. Bill, anything to add to this slide?
Let's go to the next one.
We'll go to the next one, Mary. This slide kind of hits at what we were talking about, relocating many of the services that are in central office to buildings. So in a regional team looks like this. Different implementation leads such as math, science, literacy, social studies, student services, career and technical education. All of those resources will be located out in buildings. How that looks, we don't know yet, but that's the direction that we're heading. And you can see that that includes TLCS, which are already out in our buildings, but many of the supports that are in this building will be relocated. Bill, do you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, probably one of the most important pieces to take away is this restructure is administrative. It is going to create more efficiency and save dollars that will be able to be used in other parts of the district. It puts those resources that we are maintaining into buildings closer to teachers, principals, students, programs. But it is also just as important to realize that this is not anything that, aside from a organizational supervision, collaborative way, affects principals, teachers, students, programs. Principals right now work with someone from central office they're going to work with someone closer that is assigned to be in those buildings. They have resources that are available to them right now through different departments at central office. Those resources are going to be located in that feeder system. That regional team will serve all of the buildings that are in that feeder system. And so really this is about supporting principals, teachers, students, and programs, not necessarily having any sort of change impact on them.
At this point, that concludes our presentation. So if you have any questions right now, we'd entertain those.
Director Poston.
I'm not opposed to the concept, but I'm definitely opposed to the whole process. And I want the public to be aware that this school board has had absolutely no input into this. Okay? This is all coming down from the state. They tell us we're going to get to vote on this. Well, how can you take ownership on something like this when you've not been even a part of the discussion? So when it comes to a vote, I will be voting against it. I'm not voting against the concept, but I am voting against the process.
Director Klein Jerome.
Bill, you said that this would save us dollars. Could you tell me exactly how many fewer positions we will have in this whole thing? I'd like to know first, administrative-wise, and then I'd like to know the rest, because I've seen an outline of how we are staffed down here, secretaries and assistants and names I don't even understand. So in total, how many will we be fewer, and administrative separately?
So at the level that's being presented tonight, there are 2 fewer positions that are shown versus where we are right now. There are actually 3 fewer positions when you compare that to the beginning of the year. And that's due to the fact that TJ Schneckloff was previously in a position, moved to superintendent, and that position goes away in addition to 2 more. So there are 3 different folks at that level. The levels below that, there is still work to be done. The directive and the thought process of the Department of Education is to take resources from a central location and to move those out into buildings. And the placement and the appropriateness, those are further conversations. So program directors, the next layer below what we've talked about. We have some good thoughts, but those are things that haven't necessarily been vetted or discussed extensively with the department at this point.
Okay.
The savings for what is on the screen right now is probably somewhere in excess of $250,000.
Director Hayes.
When will the interview process for these positions begin?
I'll take that, or do you?
Excuse me?
Do you want me to take that?
Sure.
So the job descriptions are kind of in the process of being approved right now. Jamie Weinsroll has had extensive input in that, and then that was a foundation that then went to the team of folks from the DE, the AEA, and TJ included. That's kind of gone back and forth, and I believe that we're within, well, actually, I believe all but one of them have been approved now as of this afternoon, and there's a few changes that are going to be required of one job description. As soon as the job description, that last one is done, they will be distributed here locally, and that will allow us to continue the posting. The interview process is going to be discussed and determined throughout this week, and will be a topic at the Friday meeting that I think board members have all heard. There's a Monday meeting and a Friday meeting, and on Friday of this week we'll be looking at proposals of the interview process and finalizing that, I hope. So, I mean, I guess I didn't ever get all the way to your answer. I would hope that if job description is done tomorrow, interview process and interview committee is determined by the end of this week, then we would post that, probably a period of 10 days to 14 days of having it posted, and then interviews would take place right after that. So we're probably about 3 weeks away.
Thank you.
Director Beck.
Just out of curiosity, is this a model that other districts use successfully? Do we have data to show that this type of situation, this type of setup would be more efficient than what we currently have? And if not necessarily that model, the idea of putting people in the school buildings, which makes intuitive sense. I'm just wondering if there's a model that we're following.
The feeder system scenario is a very common model. So creating a regional area that works together, that is probably almost more common than not in urban districts. The exact model of moving folks out of the central office is something that there's been a lot of conversation, and I don't know that I can necessarily point to a district that has that exact model for the central office scenario, and it is fairly lean. There isn't any doubt about that it's lean at the central office level. That is one of the non-negotiables that was given to the team in creating a situation in which central office was more connected. And the connection is vital to leading to different results. So I think there's been a lot of times when we've thought about that kind of question, and the answer has been that we are not in the same position in working with Davenport to improve. The issues that we've got to overcome in Davenport are not the same issues that other districts have. And so the fact that it's a little different is something that the DE has embraced and been okay with. As I said, the most non-negotiable item was the idea that people working in this building have not been as impactful and have not been as connected to the work as the DE would like to see, and the results frankly show that that needs to improve.
Thank you.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Allison, this is really a question for you on policy. Don't we have a policy that says if you are creating a new position, the district it comes to the board first before then somebody can be hired into it? Okay, I just want to make that clear that if there's a new position and you are writing new job descriptions, it should be coming to the board for our approval. I thought that was the policy, and I just wanted to clarify.
I believe we have just recently discussed that policy. I'm not sure if it's been approved yet. I think we're in. Okay.
Not as a board.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't think it's been approved yet. So we might be in
I think there's an old policy,
but yeah, okay.
I mean, I guess I'd like to make a comment to that, and I'm trying to channel some of the folks that I work with from the Department of Ed. This isn't a message coming from me or something that's personal, but the scenario that exists right now is one in which there is a definite decision by the State Board of Education that there are parts of the district that they're going to make decisions on. And so that decision leads to the Department of Ed having authority, and the Department of Education has given that authority to TJ and the group of people that we work with. TJ is a split superintendent. He works for both the state if you recall, he was appointed as an interim superintendent, and he has not relinquished that role, so he works for the state Department of Education as the ambassador for the State Board of Education. He also was hired by you as a board, and so there's a part of his role that works for you. And in this scenario that you're in your question, I would imagine that the Department of Ed answer would be that that is a decision that right now is under the auspices of the State Board of Education, not the local Board of Education. And I know that there's probably some degree of frustration that you have as a board that that is the way that it is. I encourage you, and I encourage you as heartily as I can, to focus on the improvement, making improvement, getting yourself to the point where you as a board and the Davenport district reaches some targets that allows the department to say, yep, these guys are on it. I don't know that it will be productive for you or for the district to say we are going to not accept this situation, especially if we agree with the premise, but we're going to disagree anyway. That is going to impede progress. And this board needs to really focus on making progress. And when this board makes progress, and frankly, I personally have been in front of the department and the State Board of Education talking about the progress that has been made. The department has been very open about complimenting this board and the district for the progress that has been made. I hope that we're not at a point where we're going to step back from that, because that decision of where control is going to be, that is at the discretion of the State Board of Education as to whether it will continue or not. And the way that it will not continue is if progress is being made. So I hope that we can all just focus on making progress, showing results, and moving on.
And I'm not saying that I disagree with how this is laid out. And I think Kent said that too. But when we have a policy that says we approve it, I think it really should come to us. I'm not saying I would vote no for it. I would support it. But I think when we have a policy, we should be following it.
And
Last
again,
night, I didn't think they took everything away from us as a board, but
no,
I
I
may be wrong.
agree with what you're saying. I hope that we can get back to that scenario just as much as you do.
Director Snyder.
Two questions kind of into one. What are the next steps? And two, what kind of time frame are we looking at to have this fully implemented?
So there's a phase one situation that we're in right now, which is communicating the decisions and starting the hiring process. The phase two is kind of the dominoes of hiring the layer that we talked about tonight, and then working on the other implications of that, of are there folks that are going to be assigned to work in buildings, and are there folks that are still going to work in this building, and where is that appropriate and where is not. So that's kind of phase two. And then phase three is what we've all viewed as the most important piece, and that would be getting people in the room, getting them to work together to understand the philosophy, and that is kind of a phase three. And obviously the time frame for getting through with those three phases has to be just to be able to start next school year with teams of people who are aware of really a lot of the concepts that you just saw, that they're expected to work regionally and work as a group of schools with a support team that is there to help them. They're there to collaborate with those folks, but they are also still working across levels of high schools, intermediate schools, elementary schools. And frankly, that's a scenario where I'd point out that's a good news scenario. I mean, I think right now your high schools work extremely well together And I have been in multi-high school districts before where that didn't happen the way that it happens here. So, you know, compliments to that. That's going to be easier to make that collaboration across schools happen.
Hang on. Director Poston, and then I'll get you, Bruce.
If you want this school board to buy into this, then why, at the very least, didn't you have at least one board, say the president, or at least one board member be involved in this process? You know, we've had board workshops with Harry Higginthal, and the couple of things that I always keep remembering is openness and transparency. Well, to me, this is not open and this is not transparent. So I just can't understand, how can we buy into this when we've had no input whatsoever?
Again, I would say I understand your frustration, and I want to work together to get to a position where that trust is there, and so that's not the requirement of the State Board of Education and the Department of Education. That directive of the way it has happened. I mean, well, let me rephrase that. I think that you're addressing that to me because I'm the person standing here. But none of that has been a personal decision on my part to not have the board involved. I think it really comes down to the progress of the district and the progress of the board saying we're going to be productive as a part of that solution.
Well,
You're still.
that doesn't answer my question. But I do have another question.
So let's back up. Let me try to answer the
No,
question.
I've got the floor. I've got the floor.
Sorry.
So say this does pass. Are there going to be any board members involved in the hiring process?
I believe we have already expressed that. I will make sure that we express it again, that the board wants to be involved in the hiring process.
Well, I have two recommendations. I'd like to see Bruce Potts and Karen Klein-Jerome involved with that. With Bruce's experience as a teacher and a principal and Karen's experience as a teacher, I think that would be a plus to have them on that hiring process.
I will pass that along, but I believe the DE is listening to the meeting, so I'm sure that recommendation has been heard.
Director Potts. Well, Director Potts.
I just want to remind everybody that this model, what old is new. We operated under this model for a while when Brad Allison was superintendent and when Jim Blanche was superintendent. We went to regions. Paul Johnson was my boss in my region. So it's not new. It's not a new system. I would assume some of the timeline driving this would be we are apparently going to be throwing some people to the curb. What is the timeline on that if we're going to be laying off people?
I believe May 15th is our deadline that we have to hit to notify people if they're not employed with Davenport schools.
That's the legal timeline.
Legal timeline.
Actually, that's a part of the reason why we're trying to be transparent right now with the work that is being done. So this is work that's considered done, and it's being communicated so that we can start a process, make decisions, and then folks will have an idea well before that deadline. I mean, that is the legal deadline. That's always mystified me as to why that deadline is May 15th. That seems very, very late and not respectful. There are a number of positions that are open. There are a number of positions that can become open through a cascade effect. There isn't a personal issue here that the department has against any of the current administration. The department emphasized very clearly that there were to be free and fair interview processes for both internal and external candidates. And I guarantee that there are folks as internal candidates that want it to be internal candidates only. And so that's where it's a little different. That idea of having be internal and external, and then the best candidates be selected. And if those best candidates are internal, that's the way that it will be. When we put an interview committee together for the recently hired CFO, that candidate ended up being brought before members of the board, and board members had a chance to kind of put that final seal of approval on it. I will be making an effort to have a similar kind of process where there are folks from the Davenport district. There are likely, because of our involvement, folks from the AEA. And then, as with the director of finance position, we reached out to several statewide professional organizations and had them involved in the process. So the idea of trying to create a fair group of people that recognize talents, recognize skills, recognize experiences, and bring recommendations, that has been what has been supported by the Department of Education. And so it shouldn't be that this is an effort to throw anybody out. It should not be. It is an effort to become more efficient. It is an effort to move resources closer to the buildings.
Well, we're good at euphemisms in education. I mean, we're polished when it comes to euphemisms. Personally, I just don't like how we're treating the people who, especially in this last year and a half, did yeoman's work in establishing an entire online school system for thousands of kids, got computers in the hands of everybody, internet in the hands of everybody, a dual enrollment system that had to be put together and staffed, a return to learn plan that was a moving target, all of that. These are the people that, we've been successful through this because of the people we have working in our district. And I just don't think you treat your people this way. And that's all I'm going to say.
Director Beck.
I guess along those same lines, just to make sure that we are being as respectful as possible, who is writing the job descriptions for the newer positions?
So again, though, that was began internally. HR, Jamie Weinzierl, took some information from multiple job descriptions and put that together. That was discussed among our team here locally, and then sent to the department to make some of those final determinations outside of the two department reps that we meet with regularly. They brought input from other parts of the Department of Ed to add to those or look at the appropriateness of them. So they're going to be pretty well vetted job descriptions when we get back with a lot of eyes that have looked at them. But again, that started locally and then is kind of making that first full circle back.
Well, I guess my concern is that we've asked, I'm not saying we have done this, but my concern is that we've asked people to participate in writing a job description, and then we're going to say, now you have to apply for this job. And that seems kind of disrespectful to say, you helped us create this position, but you have to apply with everybody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that hasn't been the case. So
Okay.
Jamie wrote them, but director of HR is not one of the
Right.
affected positions. And then from that point forward, then it's gone outside of
Okay.
the administrative team.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll chime in a little bit here. I like to structure myself personally, but I've been preaching for 5 years we need a change in central office. But I do want all of my colleagues here to remember next time there's any other position that gets moved around or anything like that, you're just as passionate for those people and not just administrators, because we always stand up for our administrators, and that's what we do in this district, and that's what we've done for years, and that's why where we are. Okay? You got to remember everybody. Everybody is an employee and should be treated the same and be spoken of the same at this table, like you all just did for your fellow colleagues. I just want that to be in the back of your minds every time, because so many times we contradict ourselves at this table when we do things, because we forget about what we said, and we said one thing at one meeting, but then we did something at another meeting that contradicted that. I do like the fact that everybody is equal, so no one's better than anyone. I think that helps out quite a bit. I extremely love the fact that they will be in the buildings, because nothing's better than I'm going to tell you to do something, then I leave and I go to my high castle and I don't see you anymore for another year, and I come back in, hey, how you doing, or however it works. But to have people right there to help out, I think that's a tremendous thing, and I think that's something that we've needed in this district for a long time. It sucks where we're at and how we had to get here. We're here. I mean, we got to own that and show that we're willing to move forward and move on with the things that we need to do. Every one of us sat here and asked when we interviewed TJ, are you willing to make the tough decisions? Everyone asked that question. I posed that to all of you. Are you willing to make the tough decisions? You know, we can't just ask someone that and then not do that ourselves. My other thing, you know, even at the state board meeting, the Department of Ed and Dr. Lebo, we collaborate. All right, we collaborate. I get that. I would like to see a little more collaboration on their end and include us in things. I have no problem working with them all day long. But there becomes a point when you're the only one being collaborative, and then it doesn't work. It needs to be a two-way street. And I remember when we had our separate meetings with you guys to roll this out, you know, I believe that question, Kent had asked that question about can a board member be involved. So in my mind, I was envisioning it like when you did the interview process with the CFO, and then 3 of us met with the CFO before any job offer or anything like that. So that was how I was thinking this was going to happen. But I support it. I mean, it needs to be done. I think we definitely, our district, we need a change. We need things to happen. Obviously, there's going to be, you know, some budgetary effects. It's going to be a cost savings. You know, we just, you know, every year we got to cut this position or that position, or people get moved around in a building to different positions and everything like that. We never say nothing. But if it's an administrator, god dang, we just go, we got to protect it. And I think that we have to lead by example and show everyone that everyone is the same. We are all on the same team working for the same goal. It's for the betterment of our students, our district, and our community. That has to be the forefront. It's all about these kids and what we're providing to the kids for their education. So again, I support this. I'm more than happy to be collaborative on it, but I would like it to be a two-way street. And I appreciate you being here as like the voice of the Department of Ed, Bill, and you're kind of getting the lashing, and I'm sure they're listening. But it would have been nice if they would have been part of this as well. But I get it with schedules and things going on at the Capitol and stuff like that. But again, I support it. I think it needed to happen years ago. And you know, it'll make us better. And that's at the end of the day, we have to do what is best for our students. We have to provide the best education possible to them, as well as the supports to all of our support staff that are doing things that we're asking you to do all these things, make sure kids social distance, everything else. I mean, with this whole pandemic going on and everything, we ask so much from everybody. Well, we need to give them some supports. So I will leave it at that. And Bill or TJ, if you don't have anything else, I'll move on to committee. Or you still got to finish superintendent.
Could I just say one thing, Dan? Last year when we were asked to eliminate all the teacher librarians, I was just as vocal about saving them. So I don't feel that I'm just sitting here trying to, you know, defend administrators. I fought very hard last year to save teachers. So to say that I let everything else go, I would not. So I just want to be
I
on
was just
record.
saying as a whole. I wasn't counting.
I'm just telling you,
Okay.
I would fight just as hard for any other employee group.
And you did. Duly noted.
That, I mean, one of the issues that, I mean, Kent and Karen, I know are very aware of this, and I believe Gary Sinclair made this statement and this comment. I mean, right now the district spends 84.3% of budget on staff, and that should be somewhere around 80. And I know Kent and Karen have heard that several different times. So, you know, I know we all of us, all the time, love the people that work for kids and love the people, and we know people make the biggest difference. But until there is more revenue to support that, the idea that everything can stay the same is not possible. The idea that this is going to be the only conversation that is going to happen like this, that's not realistic when 84.3% is spent on that. And I know the finance committee's been over it. I know that the board has to some degree, but I hope that you don't get into the idea that we have to protect the way we are, because student results don't match up with where we're at, and finances don't match up with where we're at. And that's what the DE is working to support and help the district to get better at in both of those areas.
With that, I mean, like I'm saying, I want to be collaborative and work together because I want to show that we're willing to move on with the things that we need to move on and not stay in the status quo and do stuff like that. I don't want to ever put the impression out there that we're going to go back to the way things were as soon as the state leaves or the Department of Ed leaves. By no means at all is that anything I'm pushing out there. I want to work together for the betterment of our district, and that's what we need to do as a board. And I think you had something, Director Poston.
Yeah, don't question Karen and myself as far as on the finance committee. I mean, yes, we need to make the cuts. We need to do it. But again, it goes back to why not include us in this decision making? Or like I said before, include the board president. Again, where is the openness and transparency? It would have been so simple to do.
I'm sure you're being very well heard in by the department tonight, and that will be a future conversation. I hope, well, you obviously said it, so you took it that way. My comments were not meant to question you or Karen in any way, shape, or form. Actually, I'm very complimentary of you both for your work in that area. I was just saying you've had that information very clear.
I will personally guarantee that as far as finances are concerned, we will never, ever get in that mess again. And I think Karen would agree with me. We're going to watch it like a hawk, and it's never, ever going to happen again.
That's awesome. Thank
Did you have anything else?
No, that concludes the report.
Bill, did you have anything else?
No.
All right, I'm going to move on to committee reports. Are there any committee reports? Director Beck.
I just wanted to update everyone on the policy committee. So Mary and Brenda had a nice long conversation with the people at Board Docs, who were able to help us streamline the process of putting in new policies with new numbers. And we're able to post them as drafts that only we can see before we actually publish them. So we're still continuing the process of revisiting all of our policies, putting in new numbers, and then we're going to adopt wholesale a new book. Okay. One of the things that they discovered in conversations with Siobhan Snyder from the IASB is that it's better for us to go slower. We were a little bit worried about trying to get things done before Mary retired, which is in what, 4 days? Not that you're counting, right, Mary? But Brenda has been involved in this process, and so we are all on the same page. And so we're backing off a little in terms of the number of policies that we'll be bringing to you each meeting, so that we have more time to really revisit them. And the one thing I guess I'd like to say, keep in mind, I'm going to continue to make those tables that I'd been making before, although I didn't get one done for this meeting. A lot of these policies, we need to decide if they're even policies that we feel like we need to have. So as policy committee chair, one of the things I want the board to keep in mind is, does a policy actually reflect something that we feel needs to be a policy if it's not mandatory? Of course, if it's mandatory, we obviously have to have it. And if so, basically keep in mind that we want to have a streamlined policy manual that reflects who we are as a district. And so we don't necessarily have to adopt every policy that's been written by the ISB. But we do want to keep their numbering system because that will help us in updating in the future. So that was my report from the policy committee. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Director Beck. Director Poshen, did you have something from the finance committee?
Karen and I and TJ and Bill Decker met last Wednesday with Gary Sinclair. Went over some of our key reports, a couple things that were brought up by Gary. Most of the savings that we'll be seeing will come after January. Part of that would be the early retirement. Our solvency is improving. And then another report, a new report to us that Gary showed us was the variance report. And Gary, I believe you're online. I don't know if you were going to go into the variance report or not.
I had not planned on doing I certainly can. I have it available. That's up to you.
No, whatever you think.
Do you want me to go over the reports that we reviewed?
That'd be great.
Okay. Okay, you should be able to see my, oh, wait a minute. You should be able to see my screen now.
Not yet. We can't. I'm sure Joe's working on it.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. I don't want to take a lot of time each month, but we will transition next month with Kevin and sharing this presentation, and then by April, Kevin making the presentation. But one of the things that we talked about early on was the need for the board to continually monitor these key measures on a monthly and an annual basis. You know, where are we this month? How does that compare to where we have been at the same time in previous years? And where are we going to end the year? And really, those measures that we want to continue to monitor are unspent authorized budget, the annual unspent authorized budget, the solvency and revenue, and the certified budget. So those are the things that we want to make sure we do. And I don't want to take a lot of time because we do it with the finance committee, but these are the key measures. The first one is the unspent balance. And you can see where we have been over the last 5 years. That's our history. Now, based on the budget that we submitted, we think we're going to end at about 9.9. Now, forecast 5, when we upload every month, it's showing our expenditures are a little higher. And I think that really relates to what was said earlier, that almost all of our savings is going to occur after January 1st. So we expect each month for this to get better. We're still in a pretty decent shape at the end of the year, but we actually think this will be better. We are certainly improving over the past. The annual unspent balance, That's really trying to monitor the authority we get every year. And you can see for the years that the district got in trouble, we were actually overspending our annual authority as much as by 4 or 5%. And when you're talking about a $200 million budget, that's a lot. This year, we're planning on being at about 96 or 97% of our annual authority. When we budget in the future, we really want to be at about 100%. Once we restore our spending authority to a reasonable level, we will want to target spending that authority that we get. Expenditures year to date, we are about at 50% of our budget, which is a little better than where we have been. I'm optimistic in seeing the amount that we have spent and the percentage. Solvency has never been the problem. The district has had cash, probably created part of the problem because we had the cash and we spent it. But we really look to improve solvency from about 10.8 to 11 or 12%. Now, I highlighted this, and our revenue's a little lower than I would like for it to see it this time of year. So that really needs, we looked at it in depth with the committee and tried to identify the variance. Interest is something that's down about $450,000, and we don't think that's going to recover. We think that's something we're just going to be that much less. Federal revenues, we think we'll get more. As we spend, we apply for it, and then it becomes revenue. We are at 50% of our expected budget. Certified in blue is the original certified budget, and 2 months ago in one of our board meetings we identified some issues. I'm not sure if it's next month or when exactly, but we will be amending this year's budget, and that is in green. And where it is optimistic. We're running at good percentages going forward. So this is the key measure report: unspent balance, annual unspent balance, solvency, and certified budget. If there were issues, there would be alarms going off where we were too high or too low. Any questions about this Excel? The other one I think does a little better for the board in telling the story. This is looking at our revenues to date. This is a revenue versus expenditure. And again, you can see our local revenue is at about 53%. That's a little lower than we have been historically. When we look at the variance, the two main issues are tuition and interest and investments. Now, tuition's different because in this 4-year history, at one time we paid open enrollment monthly and then quarterly, and now it's by semester. So we think next month this will be better. If not, we're going to have to dig deeper and make sure that our budget is at acceptable level. Overall, we're at about 50% of our revenues, which is similar to where we have been. Now, the expenditures, this is where it's a little more optimistic. On salaries, we're at $60,165,000, which is over $2 million less than last year. And we're at about 53%. So that's a good sign. Plus, we think we'll be saving some more because of early retirement. This looks very optimistic to me. In the next 2 or 3 months, that will start becoming more accurate. Benefits, we're below what we've been spending. Purchase services are on target. Now, supplies and materials are a lot higher. And we believe that is primarily COVID. that we're spending a lot more for COVID-related expenses. Overall, we're at 52% of our expenditures, which is lower than we typically have been. We actually ended the plus minus. We took in more, excuse me, we spent more than we took in, which is typical for January. We begin the year with a very high balance, and we ended the month with a high balance. So really, these measures show us where we are this month and how that compares to our past. Looking at other funds, the only thing I wanted to point out is the concern about hot lunch and activity fund, but primarily hot lunch, is we're going to have to make a decision in the next 4 months whether we use federal COVID relief dollars or we use general fund and try to get some relief there. But hot lunch is certainly an issue moving forward. Any questions about this? Okay. Every month, these are the ones that I hope the board comes to expect and demand. We talked about analytics. The one analytic that I wanted to look at that's timely is in the next few months, we will be talking about tax rates. And what you can see here, this is the overall tax rate for the 15 largest districts in the state. Tax rate is a function of taxable evaluation. It is not a function of how much you spend. And you can see that overall Davenport is about in the middle of those tax rates. We then broke it, actually, if we break it down, you can see general fund, we tend to be in the top half, and non-general fund, we tend to be in the bottom half. And that's primarily because we have no debt service. When you look at somebody like Waukee, they have a very high debt service. So tax rate, we're about in the middle of the schools our size. The special ed analytic that I wanted to look at has to do with the spending per student. And you can see the 13 largest school districts in the state. The spending per student for Davenport is below average. Now, I want to point out that the district cost per student, the way it's calculated here, is you're not going to find this in the general ledger. You won't find all of the expenses because when you calculate special ed spending, there's some dollars in there that I call soft dollars. They are a calculation. You don't take them out of your general ledger like you do salaries and transportation, because it's a calculation off of a transportation report, and regular program cost. For special ed, you get to count some of the regular program cost. And so special ed dollars, the cost is not a general ledger, it's a calculation. But when we look at, if we converted that to a percent of your general fund spending, now remember that special ed is not a general ledger cost. We're spending over the average for special ed, about 22% of what would be the general fund. So again, it points out that we want to continue to address special education because of the deficit, special education because the percent of the general fund budget that it would be. So those are the two analytics. Now, Kevin suggested that next month we actually present this same report, but we overlay it with districts that have surtaxes, because surtaxes obviously are going to lower your property tax. So we will do that next month. The one last thing I want to just remind the board of every month is we continue to look at our unspent balance. Obviously, this is the one that got us in trouble. This negative unspent balance is what we have to monitor and make sure we change. We ended last year at about 2 million. Now, for this year, everything that is in white is a known number. This we've estimated based on a 3-year average. This is a known number. This is English language learner. Now, special ed deficit, we're at 8,556,000. It's an estimate. What is new since our last presentation is this. As we worked with the district, we identified some asbestos that was being spent out of general fund this year, and we wanted to transfer that to PEPL. As we talked, we realized that over the last 5 years, the district has done a significant amount of asbestos removal out of general fund with an intent of asking the SBRC for modified allowable growth. We did spend it out of general fund, but we can't find that request was ever made. So we anticipate bringing to the board next month an SBRC request for 1.5 million of modified allowable growth for special ed, or excuse me, for asbestos removal. And then the board compliance, we're at about $197,000. If you look at last month's presentation, expenditures are up about 1.5. And that's because we've got ESSER $2, the federal COVID dollars. We plan on spending 1.5 of it this year, and then 10 million each of the next 2 years. But that means our miscellaneous revenue is also up. Right now, all in, all done, we think we're going to end up unspent balance around 11.2 million, or at about 5.49%. That is a target that we will use with the board to kind of set as a base of where we want to be over the next 5 years. As we look at the future, we will need to make changes to build that a little bit, but certainly maintain that level. Those are the key financial reports. With Kevin coming on board, we will quickly transition some of this to him. We'll kind of share some presentation responsibilities, and then he will take those over. What questions do you have?
Can I go first?
Superintendent Schneckloff, and then I'll get you Director back.
Thank you, Allison. Before we get started, personally I'd like to introduce Kevin Puscani to our team. He started on a virtual snow day and showed up and has been jumping in head first in picking up a lot of the lion's share of the work. And so I know Lisa has spoken very highly of the work that he's done so far. So Kevin, before the questions get started, is there anything that you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think this presentation on this is, some of it's new to me, but it's the same format. And I think it's a really, really useful tool to look at where you've been and where you're going. And I think trends are extremely important. And I think this is going to be really helpful to the district and to the board.
Thank you, Kevin.
Director Beck, you had a question.
Yeah, Gary, I had a question. Actually, 2 questions. Number one, the thing about the asbestos, I guess I'm confused as to why we wouldn't use PEPL money for that if we could. Could you explain the rationale behind that and what that means?
Well, yes. For this year, that was our intent, is that we were looking for general fund expenditures that could be PEPL. That was the original intent. After we did some investigation, we found out that the district had done this since 2015. And here's why they did it. With PEPL being challenged, I mean, the dollars for PEPL in every district are always in high demand. So the district took the practice of saying, okay, we will spend it out of general fund, but then we'll go to the SBRC and ask for allowable growth, ask for spending authority. So the philosophy was Pebble was tight. We'll spend it out of general, but we'll get additional authority. The problem is that kind of fell through the gap and that request wasn't made. Philosophically, it makes sense. We just needed to follow through on it.
Okay.
But to answer your question, yes, we should be spending it out of Pebble.
Okay. And then my other question was, and this may be getting ahead of things a little bit, but there's some legislation being proposed that would lower, for example, preschool funding and bring in our supplemental state aid at a pretty low level, relatively speaking. Are we kind of working on how to make sure that we're prepared for that situation?
We are, every time there's action taken, we make changes in our projection model. Last Thursday or Friday, Kevin, Lisa, and I met on our certified budget for next year. And we projected based on what we know the legislature is doing, but one of two timelines are going to hit. Either the legislature is going to take action and we can move forward with financial planning, or a time comes when we have to make a decision based on the best information we have. And so we will do that. I think our timeline is May 8th or March 8th. We're going to present the tentative certified budget. And in that, we'll talk about the forecast 5 planning that goes with it. I think on March 22nd, we'll do a final review with the board and the board will approve publication. We're going to publish March 23rd, publish March 29th, and the board approve April 12th. But in all those timelines, we will make adjustments based on what the state legislature has done.
Okay, thank you. I had one last question. The analytic you showed us about special education spending, and forgive me if you've shown us this before, but I'm wondering if we could see the same type of thing for just general education spending per pupil, and how we compare with the other districts, because I know that's been an issue in the past in terms of the foundation formula and the cap on per capita spending. So it'd just be interesting to see where we are now for general education spending per student.
Very good. We will do that next month.
All right, thank you so much.
Did anyone else have any questions? Gary, I have one. With that asbestos abatement thing popping up, has everything been gone through with a fine-tooth comb to make sure if we're able to spend it out of a different fund instead of taking it out of the general fund, we're able to do that? Do you know, or can anybody else answer that, if we've done that?
It is a work in progress, but we are absolutely doing that. Lisa's team and Lisa have been working on that. And part of it is obviously finding the time, but we found the asbestos in that process. And we've looked at all the equipment purchases with anything over a certain amount. So yes, it is something we I want to say we've done it, but it's really in progress. Things like the copier lease. We found those. We're going to transfer those. So I don't know if Lisa has anything she wants to add, but I believe her team is working on that.
Okay. What kind of time frame would it take to get all that stuff gone through, or is it just going to be like things might pop up here and there?
I would say that we believe we are mainly through it, but absolutely things will pop up. Something will come up, and just like this came up, a copier leases came up when we changed leases on copiers at mid-year. We said, okay, now how much are we paying? And it was out of general. So it really comes up as we go through it, but I think that the staff has done a very good job of going over things and trying to find things and make those transfers. And really, we're trying to do it and identify if it's a temporary thing or it's an ongoing thing. And in most cases, we believe it can be an ongoing thing.
Okay, thank you. Did anyone else have any other questions? Gary, did you have any more for us?
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you.
Are there any other committee reports? The only thing I have, we had for legislative advocacy, we had a meeting with local state legislators. TJ Kent and I were at. We had Tom Lane there as well to kind of facilitate the meeting, and we just kind of talked about the issues that are going on as far as some of the bills coming through. And I think I've said this at about every meeting, but it's something I'm trying to do. We just had this meeting earlier with the city of Davenport. I'm going to try to meet with the county board of supervisors and the city of Bluegrass, Buffalo, and Walcott, because we need to start getting out and involving these people that have real estate within our district. So if there are no other committee reports, I'm going to move on to items requiring action. And now we will now hold a public hearing for the sale of the real estate. The notice of the public hearing was published in the Quad City Times on February 10th, 2021. Public notice is hereby given that there is now on file in the office of the board secretary of the Davenport Community School District in the counties of Scott and Muscatine, state of Iowa, resolutions for the sale of real property and delivery of conveyance under and by virtue of which it is proposed to sell and convey the following described real estate to the Iowa Department of Transportation for the widening of Brady Street and the installation of turn lanes. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Well, since no one's getting up to move, seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any further discussion on this matter? May I have a motion on the approval of sale of real estate for widening of Brady Street Stadium?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the following resolution for the sale of real estate to the Iowa Department of Transportation for the widening of Brady Street and installation of turn lanes. Resolution for sale of real estate to the Iowa Department of Transportation for the widening of Brady Street and installation of turn lanes. Resolved that the school district proposes to sell, grant, and convey certain property to the state of Iowa for mutual benefit and other certain benefits, terms and conditions as set forth in the purchase agreement to be signed by Dan Gosa, President of the Board of Directors, and Mary Carruthers, Board Secretary, relating to Scott County Project Number NHSN 461110 2R82, parcel number 6, regarding certain real estate in a part of the parcel of land located in the southwest quarter of Section 13, Township 78, North Range, 3 east of the 5th PM. Scott County, Iowa, described in Town Lot Deeds Book 113, page 111, and document number 2010-1306 in the office of the Scott County Recorder, as shown on the acquisition plats attached to said purchase agreement. Resolved further that the proposed purchase agreement and deed are hereby approved, that Dan Gosa, President, and Mary Carruthers, Board Secretary, are hereby empowered and directed to execute, acknowledge the delivery of the name of the school district to purchase agreement and deed and any other instrument of title required by law of which may be necessary or desirable to effectuate the sale, grant, and convey the property to the state of Iowa. Resolve further that the executed purchase agreement and deed are hereby accepted and approved by the school district, and Mary Carruthers, Board Secretary, is hereby directed to deliver the executed purchase agreement and deed to the Iowa Department of Transportation right-of-way agent and their duly authorized representative in exchange for the consideration of mutual benefits and other valuable considerations. All is authorized in accordance with the Code of Iowa.
Better take a drink of water after all that. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Klein-Jerome. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. We will now have a public hearing and approval for the 1080 hours of instruction for the 2021-22 school year. May I have a motion on the approval of the 1080 hours of instruction for the 2021-22 school year?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I recommend the board approve the schedule of 1,080 hours of instruction time rather than 180 days for the 21-22 school year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Potts. We will now hold a public hearing on this proposal, which was published in the Quad City Times on Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any further discussion on this matter? I'll now call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on the approval of the start date of Monday, August 23rd, 2021 for the 2021-22 school year?
Mr. President,
Director Snyder?
I move that the board approve the start date of August 23rd, 2021 for the 2021-22 school year.
Second.
Boom, boom. Seconded by Director Klein-Jerome. We will now hold a public hearing on this proposal, which was published in the Quad City Times on Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. I thought someone was actually coming up there this time. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Snyder?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Postian?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a... First off, does anybody need a break?
Yes.
All right. We'll take a quick 5-minute break. Now that everybody's back in the room, I think we'll get started back up here. Joe, are you back to live streaming? Thank you, sir. Now, may I have a motion on item 10.04?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I recommend the board approve rescinding the pandemic response and emergency suspension of policy resolution passed by the board on March 23rd, 2020.
Second.
Seconded by Director Klein-Jerome. Hot off the draw tonight. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Postian.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on item 10.05?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes. Or Director Beck. I looked right at you too. Linda's been like making all the
I
motion. I
know.
apologize.
that's because she's faster than me. I recommend that the board approve the superintendent and board goals as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Director Klein Jerome. Are there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on item 10.06?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the resolution in support of EICCD as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Director Klein Jerome. Is there any discussion? Superintendent Schneckloff.
Yes, we. There he is. Dr. Doucette is with us.
Hey, I watched your entire board meeting.
So, one of the things that we wanted to let our public know is that Eastern Iowa Community College is looking to do some enhancements, and this program is what they're trying to do at their campus is can only enhance what we currently have at Davenport Community School District. We have fine CTE programs. We have wonderful course offerings, and what you're going to hear is not going to take away from anything that you hear, only provide extended opportunities for our students in our district. So, Mr. Doucette, if you wouldn't mind briefing the board about this.
Okay, I did notice that all the other items on this part of the agenda went quickly, so I don't want to take too much more time. But let me give you a very brief overview. The resolution itself provides a rationale for what we're doing. But first of all, let me just thank you for the opportunity to provide some additional information about what is a really major initiative for us, along with our partner K-12, our K-12 partners. It's also important that I just also say that I'm here to provide information about this major initiative that will extend, as Superintendent Schneckloff has said, educational opportunities to students. But I'm not here to ask for a specific vote, or either tonight or on March 2nd, as that would not be appropriate for me to do. We've worked closely with our 18 school districts to identify the critical needs that they have in programming, primarily in career and technical education. We've worked for 3 years with faculty developing guided pathways that lead students from career exploration in middle school and high school to introductory courses at the secondary level in career and technical fields in high school, and then eventually to college level courses in career and technical programs that lead them to completion of certificates, and then eventually to degrees at EICC, earning a substantial amount of that credit while in high school. I know you're familiar with some of the other partnerships we have with the Davenport schools at North and other places. So you understand that what we're trying to do is give students greater opportunities to develop the skills and abilities that they need to get great jobs in career fields, and also to provide pathways and incentives for students who might right now not be doing anything after high school in terms of getting education or training, but to give them opportunities to see a different career paths, not just the traditional one through to associate degrees and baccalaureate degrees, but also to certification and in completion of post-secondary credentials that provide really good jobs in career fields. We've worked with the faculty again to develop those pathways. We've identified student interests in high demand programs, and it all led to the conclusion that we simply needed to substantially expand our programming in our career and technical fields, as well as the facilities that provide that education, that provide us the opportunity to offer that education and training. This resulted in the bond referendum that comes up on March 2nd in the special election. I think you have seen the resolution. I can provide some kind of listing of the particular programs that would be particularly of interest to Scott County students. If you'd like me to kind of go through a little bit of a list of that. Is that too much information?
No, you briefly go over the ones that we do not have that can be highlighted through this initiative.
Sure. Well, for instance, at the Scott campus, we'll be renovating the entire wing to offer allied health and nursing programs, including for career academies for high school students. Those programs right now are some of our most high demand programs, and in fact are pretty full. And so we have to expand facilities in order to provide career academies there for our high school students, and that's a major facilities renovation. We have an automotive technology, business and education programs that will be enhanced on the Belmont campus at Scott as well. At the Blong Center, we'll be building additional facility. We'll be expanding the facility to enhance our current programs in welding, mechanical design, adding new programs in construction management, advanced manufacturing and robotics, and additional programming in engineering technology. We'll be in partnership with the North Scott schools. We'll be building an agricultural innovation center to bring post-secondary education to Scott County for the first time, including programs in farm management, agribusiness, and agricultural mechanics and diesel technology. It will be the only program of its kind in our organization. And then at the urban campus, we'll be expanding, we'll be adding our program in criminal justice, as well as we'll also be expanding the programming we have there in networking, cybersecurity, and augmented and virtual reality programming. So those are the key programs that would be beneficial to Davenport students. They are also able to go to the programs in other parts of the district. You know that we serve 6 major counties, and that we'll be expanding program throughout those 6 counties. Now, of the 18 school districts, 13 have already signed 28E agreements where they're guaranteeing seats in selected programs for the next 10 years. We have 11 school districts that have adopted the resolution very similar to what is in front of you tonight. And so this is a major initiative. It's been designed and developed collaboratively with our partner schools. You know of the work that we do together with our concurrent enrollment programs, and this is a big deal for us, and I think it will be a big deal for our entire region and the communities in it. And so I appreciate any support that you could provide for it, and I'll answer any questions that you might have.
I think you knocked it out of the park, Mr. Doucette. We don't have any questions. And for anybody that didn't know, he is the chancellor at Eastern Iowa Community College. Sure.
There are advantages to going late in the program, where most people's capacity for extended meetings and additional questions declines.
That's a fact.
And so I wouldn't say it was anything to do with my eloquence.
Well, thank you very much for staying and hanging around so long.
Let me just say that we really value the partnership the partnerships we have with the Davenport schools. I'm a resident of Davenport. I work in Davenport. It's a community that I'm deeply committed to, and deeply committed to working with you in any way we can to provide opportunities to the students and to help you be successful in these difficult times that you're going through right now.
Thank you again. We appreciate it. All right. Do any of the board members have any questions on this? Director Beck.
I just have a comment that even though I'm wearing my Blackhawk College mask and I'm fully support Blackhawk College, I also appreciate the opportunities that your EICC provides to our Davenport students. So thank you.
Perfect. Director Snyder.
Yeah, along the lines with Director Beck there, I can't even begin to express my appreciation to Eastern Iowa Community Colleges and what they offer to our students and give them opportunities that years ago didn't exist. And I can't think of a more important partner that we brought on board in my first term as a board member. And it's pretty exciting, all the things that they have cooking, and we're very, very, very fortunate to have them in our backyard.
Thank you.
You're making me blush.
All right. Seeing no other ones, I'll call for the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of
Thank you
your
for
night.
your confidence in us.
All right. May I have a motion on item 10.07?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
the Policy Committee recommends the board approve Policy 503.11, graduation requirements.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Klein-Jerome.
I have a question. Could somebody explain it appears to be new special ed language that's in this policy?
That is Corey Guy's responsibility, I think. No, I'll let you go ahead and do it. I thought we would have it covered, and that was like 3 days ago, so.
I didn't see Sandy here, otherwise I would have had Dr. Schmitz talk to it. But we looked at, so there's new regulation that students can graduate with their IEP goals. So we looked at the IASB regulation, and then we also looked at I got recommendations from Sandy about what that wording needs to be, and so that's the new clause that's on there.
So are they taking the same requirements as others, but I guess I don't quite understand. So they may not be taking the basic requirements that everybody else is, but they passed their IEP goals, so therefore
So we're talking about a very small population of students. So students in 1% who have substantial accommodations would pass on IEP goals. And that would be determined based on their needs, the IEP team, that transition meeting that would occur.
So it won't be all special ed kids, it'll be a very small, and then, but will their diplomas say they graduated just like everybody else's, or will it have some little asterisk?
We currently only have one Davenport diploma.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Director Snyder.
On this too, Karen had expressed some desire under the social studies to have government listed, and we went through that as a policy committee. And after talking to administration, there's a lot of things under each one of these. For example, language arts. You're required a speech class, but it's not specifically spelled out because it's under the heading of language arts. So each one of these has requirements within them. And we chose, if we listed one area, we'd have to list them all. And then as soon as some state guideline would change, then we'd have to go back and revisit this policy all the time. So we chose or thought that it would be better to just leave the categories and the terms that are required
but know in there that there are specific classes that are required within each of these groups, as Karen had requested.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Now we will move on to discussion items.
No.
Nope.
Approval of calendar. Jeez. It's a long, yeah, it's right there in front of my face. May I have a motion on item 10.08?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the academic calendar for the 2021-2022 school year as presented.
Second.
I already had you marked. Any discussion?
I just have
Director
one thing.
Klein Jerome.
I'd like to say thank you. I understand that you collaborated and labor management and took this where you know, now that Chapter 20 has been gutted, you really didn't have to, but I appreciate the fact that you involved other employee groups in this.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Postian,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Snyder,
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Now I can move on to discussion items. Policies. I'll turn it over to you, Director Beck.
Okay, so we have 7 or so policies here, and I'm just going to go through each of them in turn. The first one is policy 401.02. This is an employee conflict of interest policy. Our current policy, we do not have a current policy that states specifically in this much detail that conflicts of interest, sort of laying out what constitutes a conflict of interest for employees. Currently, we have a policy 307.07 that's in business operations, and it just says that district employees shall not sell things in excess of $500 unless the sale is made pursuant to an award. Members of the board shall not have an interest, direct or indirect. So there's not really an employee conflict of interest policy. So this is the language that the IASB has. And I believe we changed it very little as a policy committee and wanted to adopt it as it is written. It's basically very similar to the administration conflict of interest policy language, that certain types of activity, people can have jobs outside of the school district as long as it doesn't interfere with their activities. But more importantly, this is that you should not leverage your school position for monetary gain, and that you should also not be an agent or dealer for the sale of textbooks or other school supply companies. And there's a lot more information there, but that's kind of the detailed part of this. So if anybody has any questions or comments, Director Klein Jerome?
I do. What if I was a teacher who wanted to do tutoring, not during the school day, but I was going to be paid for it? Is that a conflict of interest? Because there is a financial gain, and it says employees' use of their position with the school district for financial gain. Well, it's kind of with the school district because I would know the kids who need it, and would that be a conflict of interest?
That's a good question. I wouldn't think it's a conflict of interest in general, but as the policy is written, it could potentially be seen as a conflict of interest. So certainly we want to be cognizant of that.
for that one. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll take that back to the committee and discuss making that some of those specifics, so that
not
we
a
don't
conflict.
accidentally keep people from doing things that we
Okay.
would normally not find a problem with. Yeah. Anything else? I think the main goal of this is so that, somebody can't set up a company and
Sure.
run all, and interfere with their current work. And you also can't be the agent or dealer selling textbooks to the district that is using your textbooks. Okay, the next policy is the nepotism policy. We actually just revisited this policy. Currently, our policy 401.38 is our nepotism policy, and it is pretty straightforward. We discussed this very recently, that it is, in a district our size, it's not really possible to not have related people working in the district, and that there are special circumstances when someone may need to supervise a family member, but that should be avoided if at all possible. So this is sort of the standard language from the IASB. We didn't really change it. So any comments, questions? Again, we don't want to box ourselves out of good employees. So we put it, there's that extra that you have to have consultation from the superintendent, I believe, or from the board. Let me pull up the new policy there. Sorry. I have 17 tabs open, and it's really hard to remember. Mr. Potts.
I would assume that the superintendent would, in making any of these decisions, differentiate between supervising an employee and evaluating an employee, because they're not necessarily the same thing. Okay.
Yes, and we also have subject to approval of the board when there is a situation where something like that might come into play. But we can certainly add language specifying the difference between evaluation and supervision if you think it's important, and bring it back to the committee. Would you like us to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, anything else on that one? All right. The next one is a policy on the limitations to employment references, and this is a fairly standard policy language that is basically, it's basically one that we felt was important because this is the policy that essentially keeps you from passing employees on to other positions when there are rumors and allegations of misconduct that may not necessarily have been publicly charged or something like that. So basically, it's sort of the you can't just pass somebody on to another district who has violated certain laws. So we felt it was important to have this one. We don't currently have a policy that says this. Okay. The next one is employee travel compensation. This is, again, a fairly standard policy. We have one already. It's 303.11, and it's very basic. What we want to make sure we don't do is add in the actual amounts for reimbursement and things like that, because those change fairly regularly, but that we have a pretty standard policy on employees being compensated for travel within the district or outside of the district, depending on their circumstances. And so we thought the IASB language was appropriate. We added in some information on the use of district-owned vehicles, because that is language that was not in the IASB policy but was in our other one, because we encourage the use of district-owned vehicles whenever possible, rather than personal vehicles, if I remember that correctly. Yes? Maybe? Okay. And so we just want to make sure that we're following our practices there. Director Klein-Jerome?
I have a question under overnight stays. Detailed receipts are not required for per diem reimbursement. We don't pay for alcohol, and nowhere in this policy does it say that. But if I don't have to turn in a detailed per diem to get the reimbursement, you could be paying for my alcohol. Does that need to come in here? Because
so right now that would be in the administrative regulation and in the paperwork that you have to fill out. So there is an administrative regulation that goes along with this that has the specifics of, this year's mileage reimbursement, this year rate, and things like that, that changes fairly regularly. And I believe it states something like that in there, but I will let.
It's a set amount. Because I asked this question
Okay.
because in my line of work, I have to turn in an itemized receipt, or the Department of Labor will go nuts. I did ask that. It's a set amount. This is what you get. So whether you spend more than that, this is what you're getting. I don't remember what the threshold was or whatever. It's lower than what I had expected,
But the question
Well,
was
it's
about
not the set
alcohol.
amount, it's the alcohol that
Yeah.
I could just turn in a receipt that here it is, and all you paid for was
Yeah. So like you can't
alcohol.
buy dinner with a 6-pack of beer and
I
turn
don't
that
think
in for
you don't
reimbursement.
turn in the receipt though. It's just
you don't
it's
turn
just
in
a
receipt,
set
it doesn't
amount.
matter.
This is what you get. If you don't use that
Oh,
on
okay.
food and stuff, that's on you. You know what I mean?
I just remember way back that was a big deal that we not purchase any alcohol in anything that was going to be reimbursed, and I just didn't see any of that addressed here.
So that would be in the
But if it comes in
administrative
the
regulation
regulations,
if it is some.
It just alleviates. So when you go somewhere, you have to upfront say, is there breakfast provided? Because then that factors in your per diem. So when you fill out your sheet, if none of those things are provided, then you get this much for breakfast, this much for lunch, and this much for dinner, and it's just provided. Kind of takes away the receipts. So
okay. And the alcohol.
We can dig into that a little bit, yeah. Okay, so our next one is recognition for service of employees, and this is kind of a standard, we recognize that people do work. We did one tonight for Mary. People do good work, and they should be recognized for that, but that we would not spend the taxpayers' money exorbitantly or frivolously on that type of thing. And in fact, we didn't spend taxpayers' money on Mary's, just making that clear. But that it should be something that's done without using taxpayer money as much as possible. We have a current policy in place that is less specific. It says the board encourages the appropriate recognition of employees who retire or resign from the district. The IASB language is a little bit more detailed in just reminding people that it is taxpayer money. So we proposed that language. Okay. The next one is employee political activity. We do not currently have a policy that states anything about employee political activity. However, it is sort of woven in a couple of other places, particularly policy 103.01, which is on, where is it? The use of district communication systems, that you may not use district communication systems like your email, for example, to promote political activity. And so this is just specifying that what employees can't do related to politics. So pretty straightforward. And then the last one is on child abuse reporting. And this surprisingly is not a mandatory policy, but it is a policy that lays out who is a mandatory reporter and under what circumstances. And so we don't currently have a policy on this, but we thought it was important to adopt, and it includes language on how to find out information about how to report abuse and fraud through the Department of Health of Human Services and the state of Iowa. And we decided it was important to adopt. Director Klein-Jerome?
See, I read all of these very carefully. The second line, all licensed school employees, teachers, coaches, and paraeducators are mandatory reporters. Shouldn't administrators be in there? Because they're mandatory reporters.
Yes.
And even though it says all licensed school employees, but then you list who those.
Yeah.
I think administrators should be
Okay.
put in there.
I mean, they are licensed, so they would fall in there, but yeah, we can add administrators.
But so are teachers, but we put them in there
Okay.
separately.
No problem. All right, anything else? Okay, that's it for the policies for discussion.
Nearing the end here. Are there any board report or board requests? Any board requests?
Oh, yes.
Kent, did you have a board request? Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, I have 3 board requests.
Put it on record.
The first one, Director Hayes, data request, February 22nd, 2021. Item request, an agenda item. Description of request, I would like to ask that we have monthly updates as to the restructuring of the district and where we are with it.
Second.
Why are you making this request? With the discussion this evening, I feel the board would like to remain in the loop of what is going on, even though there is no input. When would you like this? The 4th Monday of each month until resolved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Klein Jerome. Next board request by Director Klein Jerome. Dated request February 22nd, 2021. It's a request for information. What is the time or description of the request? What is the timeline for the CRVP rollout to staff, and can this be moved up so the early out Wednesdays can be discontinued so students can receive an extra hour of instruction weekly, and could this be done by April 1? Why are you making this request? Now that students are back to 100% in-person learning, it is important to give them more instruction time while addressing the citations is important. Students' learning should be our primary focus the remainder of this year, and we should find alternative ways to address the CRVP rollout. When would you like this information? Or when would you like this information? ASAP timeline for Wednesday by April 1st. Is there a second?
Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. Second.
Seconded by Director Beck. All right. Next board request is by Director Klein Jerome. Data request February 22nd, 2021. Item requested is a request for information. Description of request. Board members will be given the number of individuals currently quarantining, regardless if it is related to district exposure, and new individuals placed in quarantine no matter where the exposure occurred. Why are you making this request? Now that we are fully doing in-person learning, it is important to know the precise number of both COVID cases and numbers of quarantine cases, no matter where the exposure happens. When would you like this? Beginning Friday, February 26, 2021. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. That was it for board requests. Are there any administrative reports?
Not at this time.
All right. Before I adjourn, we'll do our board reflection on the meeting tonight. I'll just start at one end of the board table and work my way around. And Director Kleindrum, I'll start with you. You've been quick on the trigger all night, so I figured you'd have something right away.
Well, it's 9:20. People want to go home, go to bed. I really appreciated the Lincoln presentation. I had no idea how many things have moved in there. And I hope that they do get the opportunity to reach out more to our students to get them involved in it and not just a word of mouth thing. So I thought that was very informative, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Director Poston.
I appreciated learning about the face shield production through the CTE program.
Thank you. Director Beck.
I would say the highlight for me is what's going on at the Lincoln Center. I had no idea also that so many different things were going on there. I really appreciated that, finding out what was going on there.
Thank you. Director Potts.
The highlight for me was the stuff on the Eastern Iowa Community College and the future that may be laid out if that referendum passes that could impact a lot of our students, a lot of students in the county. That was, to me, one of the most insightful and uplifting, optimistic things we discussed tonight, because some of the other stuff we discussed wasn't.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Snyder.
I've got a few things here. One, as a board member, we've had numerous people hammering us for a number of years to make cuts at the administration level to help keep cuts as far away from the classroom and students as possible. I would say to those people, your voice is being heard. Everybody mark your calendars. August 23rd is the first day we're allowed to start by law, so that is our first day of school next year. And I don't know about any other board members, but I got absolutely hammered on President's Day with people asking me how come we're the only school district in the area still having classes. And I noticed on next year's calendar, President's Day is a federal day off.
Thank you, Director Snyder. Director Hayes.
I like the Lincoln presentation. I wish we could have watched the full 20 minutes of it, but that information will be sent out so you can see some of the other things that are going on over there. I also like the openness with the restructuring, although there was quite extensive conversation on it. Like Director Snyder said, this has been something that has been asked for years. I guess I'm not really a control person, but under the current circumstances that we're in right now, as local boards with partial accreditation, we have no say. So whatever it is that the state feels that we can do to save money, that's kind of where we are. And I think until all of this is all taken care of, we just kind of have to literally take one for the team and go with it. So I appreciate Chief Decker for going into detail, but again, he's just the messenger in all of this. And I just feel that I'm glad we got that discussion out.
Thank you. Superintendent Schneckloff.
Just want to thank Mary Carruthers for everything that she's done. She's an incredibly hard worker, kind person. It's always refreshing to have somebody who's very direct with you, but has your best interests in heart. And I'd say that's one of your biggest strengths that you've always brought to this team. And so my reflection of the night is just thank you. Very appreciated. And you will be missed. So thank you.
Thank you. I will echo that as well. Mary, we sure will miss you. There was some negative things that happened during the meeting tonight, but I thought all in all it was pretty good. Board members were very engaged and, said their piece and were very passionate about what they were saying. So they can't say there's a lack of effort here. I'll say that. And again, I'll reiterate, I'd like to see a little more collaboration and things like that. But, we're getting there. We're doing things. But I also want to put across that, we're not just doing things now to get things done. These are things that are going to have future impacts, and they need to be done. And moving forward, as a board, we need to be progressive with this stuff and make good things happen for our district. That's what it's all about. Not just because we have citations and things like that, we're trying to fix things for now. We need to fix things for the longevity. So, we're not all going to be sitting here forever. I'm even starting to get gray in my hair from all these meetings. So, but again, I thought it was a good discussion with the board members. I appreciate you guys presenting that. And again, thank you, Mary Carruthers. Greatly appreciate you. And thank you, everybody, for coming early for that meeting with the city. I thought that went very well, and I want to thank all of our staff that set up the room for both meetings. Thank you all very much, because it was a big task, and we got it pulled off. And Mary, if you want to come over, I'm going to let you bang the gavel to close out our very last meeting with you. But I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn before I let her bang this thing. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do it to it.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Mary.